Hi there, and welcome to Fuzzy on the Details. My name is Fuzzy, and if you like the Marvel Multiverse Roleplaying Game, you've come to the right place. Today, we're digging into iconic weapons. We'll start with a review of the rules, the Errata, and recent mentions in the latest Tony's Workshop document, where Marvel talks about the new rules they're testing. Then we'll pivot to a breakdown of all of the iconic weapons in the game, because there are some really well-designed ones, and a few that feel vastly underpowered. Finally, we'll take that analysis and we'll distill it down to a few simple recommendations for those wanting to create their own iconic weapons in the game. That is a lot to cover, so let's get right into those details. Let's start by reviewing where iconic weapons sit in the hierarchy of weapons, so we have a sense of how powerful they should feel. There are 3 levels of weapons beyond the common ones listed on page 34 of the core rulebook. Reminder, you get common weapons for free whenever you take a ranged or a melee weapon power. A signature weapon is only a tag, and there is no limit on how many tags a character can have, so it's not surprising that it doesn't grant any special bonus. The game uses this tag in 2 ways. First, for flavor, like the mention of Hawkeye's bow here, or Crossbones having a tag for submachine gun. The second is for weapons like Elektra's Sais, as mentioned here, or Deadpool's katana. Sais and katanas aren't technically identified as weapons anywhere in the game, so by a strict interpretation of the rules, using this tag is the way to ensure that a weapon like a sai or a katana doesn't get the improvised weapon treatment. Signature attacks, on the other hand, has a significant mechanical benefit. That character gets an edge on any attack made with a particular weapon or power. So naturally, this comes with a higher cost than signature weapon, a trait instead of a tag. What's interesting about this trait is that although the definition clearly calls out weapon or attack power, there isn't a single character in the game that has a weapon associated with this trait. I think that's one of the more overlooked rules in the entire game. Finally, the iconic weapon power can do some really powerful stuff, as we'll see shortly, and therefore is the most expensive, costing a power. Note how wide open the language is here. Signature weapon has no benefit, signature attack consistently grants an edge, but iconic weapon has no mechanical limitations or guidance. There are 5 characters impacted by iconic weapon errata. Juggernauts was just a typo. They wrote Crimson Bands instead of Crimson Gem. The next piece of errata is much more impactful, as it confirms that iconic weapons follow the same stacking rules as other modifiers. This weakened the Thors, as you can see. Also, they gave Laura Kinney iconic weapon with a +1 modifier and took away her Mighty 1 power. So that's a wash as far as the multipliers go, but her non-combat check did take a hit and was reduced from not having Mighty 1 anymore. Logan's errata is to call out that his adamantium claws only provide a +1 multiplier to melee. The way it was originally written, it would apply to both melee and ranged. And quickly, you'll see there was a reference to iconic weapons in the latest Tony's Workshop document, which you can find on marvel.com/RPG. I think this call-out is a good reminder that iconic weapons are often the source of a lot of power and integral to a character. Destroying one with something as mundane as a disarm attack wouldn't be very fair to the player, any more than simply taking a power away from them would be. Alright, let's start with the stinkers. It's no surprise that the 4 characters impacted by the errata we just went over are on this list. If the bonus for iconic weapons doesn't stack, then Wolverine's adamantium claws are functionally exactly the same as a knife. Actually, it's far worse than that because Wolverine is spending a power on it. I have lots of thoughts on how to fix this, but I'll cover that in an upcoming Homebrew video. Black Panther is in the same situation. He's investing in a power for a +1 modifier that's the same as having a common knife. And the fact that his claws are electrified, but has no mechanical impact at all, is not great. Karnak is interesting. He uses a power to treat his hands as melee weapons, so he can use a few melee powers without holding a weapon. That's a minuscule benefit when you consider the same mechanical effect could be achieved by just giving him a club. That's a high cost for flavor. The +1 melee bonus for Mjolnir is wasted on the Thors because they both have Mighty 4. They do get a benefit from the +1 being applied to range attacks, but so does Hawkeye with a stick and a string. And while having a ranged weapon return to your hand is undeniably cool and flavorful, how is that functionally different from a bow and arrow, which also has a +1 multiplier and has unlimited ammunition in this game? So mechanically, Mjolnir isn't contributing anything special to either of the Thor's combat abilities. The weapons that Wrecker and Thunderball use are called out as a throwable club that automatically returns to the user. So it functions as a blunt range weapon, which is otherwise missing in the game, but at least it fills a gap. But that kind of gap could also easily be filled with a homebrewed common weapon, like a shotgun with rubber bullets or a bow with blunt arrows. Now let's look at some weapons that have some additional versatility or efficiencies. These are a step above the last group, but definitely not the cream of the crop. Star-Lord's Element Gun, which is different from his blasters in the movie, is exceptionally versatile in that it can mimic 4 different effects, so you can choose the right one for the moment. Dagger's light daggers are just as powerful as, say, a thrown dagger, except that they do focus damage instead of health. In the core rules, that's really nice flexibility, but it feels a little bit more like a lateral move than something worth a full power. Herbie's Optiblaster is in the same boat. It's equally as powerful as a pistol, but currently the only way to apply blind with a common weapon is with a flashbang grenade. And finally, looks like the Night Nurse got herself some Stark tech. I think this is the best use of the iconic weapon power on this page, because although she could have just taken the elemental burst with tech reliance, iconic weapon is in the basic power set, as are all of Night Nurse's other powers. So even at rank 1, she's got a thematic bonus, which allows her to get her logic up to 3. That's a really big impact at rank 1. Okay, now on to the real standouts. The +1 damage multiplier for Cap's shield is no better than any other common weapon, despite the vibranium. But having it grant a power is really nice. And having that power scale is even better, especially if you were playing, say, a rank 3 Falcon who just got his hands on the shield and has some room to grow. That's a really nice design. And I love Daredevil's Billy Club. Again, the +1 isn't special, but it's doubly versatile because it is a thrown blunt weapon, which doesn't exist as a common weapon, and it's a weapon that can be used in melee or ranged. And it grants a movement type. That's really cool. The cloak is really interesting. It requires that Tyrone actually grab an opponent, but getting a free attack each round is very powerful. And theoretically, it could be done against multiple opponents. It is pluralized in the text after all. So he could zip around the battlefield getting attacks on 2, 3, 4 enemies at a time. This could be devastating in a room full of lower level goons. They'd be easy to grab, and they'd have a hard time breaking out. Patriot's shield is really powerful because it doesn't grant energy burst like Night Nurse's weapon does. It goes right to blast, which is a rank 2 power, so it's like spending 1 power on iconic weapon to get 2. Also, since the range of the drone is line of sight, and there's an additional 10 spaces of range on top of that for the power, its effective range could be double or triple that of Elemental Blast, which is 10. And you could fire it around corners. Plus, on top of all of that, you get Glide. That is a lot. The Twilight Sword. So, we just saw this with Herbie and Dagger. If you're changing the effect of a weapon, it should explicitly say that. The light dagger said inflict focus damage rather than health. And Herbie's Optiblaster says it works like a regular pistol, but it blinds the target on a fantastic success. The Twilight Sword does not use that language. So, on a fantastic success, an enemy would be bleeding because of the sword and ablaze because of the Twilight Sword effect. Finally, these last 3 iconic weapons don't really function as weapons, so it's kind of hard to judge them on the same scale. All Black grants Gore all of his powers, so it functions the same way the Iron Man suit does, or Hulk's alternate form. So depending on how you look at it, this is either the most powerful weapon in the game because of the sheer number of powers it grants, or the worst because it can be replaced by a tag, like alternate form. Either way, the word powerless is problematic because it isn't really defined. Does it mean he loses only his powers, but keeps his ability scores and traits? Or is it meant to be a condition like paralyzed? What happens if you just disarmed Gore? I'd avoid using inexact wording like this if you're creating your own iconic weapon, and just stick to the existing rules. Juggernaut's Crimson Gem is a purely defensive item that is undeniably very powerful, but in no way a weapon. This isn't technically against the rules. The open-ended nature of the iconic weapon power gives narrators the flexibility to do pretty much anything, but I think it's kind of against the spirit of the rules. And finally, we have Silver Surfer's Board. It grants Flight 2 and is summonable, obviously powerful and thematically on point, but again, not a weapon. I think this is closer to military equipment than anything else we've seen in the game. If you've made it this far, I'd appreciate it if you could smash that like button like you were Captain America wielding Mjolnir. It really does help the channel out. Now let's review some of the insights we've picked up along the way in this video to keep in mind when you're building your own iconic weapon for a new character. First, an iconic weapon's strength shouldn't come from only a multiplier bonus. It is useless to heroes with a high enough mighty or accuracy power. There are so many other ways to make your character feel more powerful. An iconic weapon is a power, so it should do more than the flat edge you get for a signature attack, which is only a trait. Swapping out one critical effect for another might be flavorful, but it's underpowered compared to many other iconic weapon abilities. That kind of flexibility is fun, but kind of a lateral move. As a basic power, iconic weapon is a great way to help a hero limit the number of power sets they have. Aim for a thematic bonus when you're building a character with an iconic weapon, especially at a lower rank. Finally, rather than have a character gain all of their powers via an iconic weapon, look to alternate form or high-tech suit. These won't cost you a power, and it leans on existing rules. I'm already working on a follow-up Homebrew video which puts some of this guidance to use. I will definitely be tackling some new iconic weapons not in the game, and I might try to reclaim some of the ones we've seen in that first group. Do you have any requests? Please let me know in the comments. And as always, I really appreciate everyone's support, and I hope you all have a great day.